Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on our AAKC broadcast for the region of 4 East for our second webinar, where we are discussing the terminal degree. We are so excited that you decided to join us today and participate in this conversation, or to tune in later on as it is going to be recorded. I'm Janelle Love. I'm the regional representative for NASPA's 4 East region of the African American Knowledge Community. And I'm joined today by 3 lovely panelists who have decided to share their journey with you about how did they obtain their PhD or their EDD, and what is it like to be a current doctoral student. So with me today, I have Dr. Michael Anthony, who's the Vice President of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management at Rochester Community and Technical College. I have Dr. Lisa Jackson, who is the Associate Director for New Student Programs at the University of Illinois. And I have Jaymee Lewis-Flenaugh, who is a Residence Director and first-year doctoral student at Miami University in the PhD Student Affairs and Higher Education program. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We are excited to get going. Our first question for you is to go ahead and introduce yourselves. Let us know a little bit about who you are, what you do at your institution, and maybe what path did you take to receive your degree?
Would you like me to start?
Go ahead.
Wonderful. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. As Janelle said, I'm Michael Anthony. I serve as the Vice President of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management at Rochester Community and Technical College in Rochester, Minnesota. Some of us think that I'm in Rochester, New York. I am not. That's a common mistake. My degree is in educational leadership and organizational development. It's a PhD from the University of Louisville. By the way, just to be clear, pronouns for me, he, him, his, as we go through the conversation. When I was, I guess, working at the University of Louisville many years ago at this point, I decided to pursue a doctorate. I knew I wanted to get a doctorate. My mother always told me when I was young that I should have options, and higher education was about options. Now, I'm a first generation student, and so I didn't know what that meant, but I know I needed to get as many options as possible. She did not want me to end up in a job where I was unhappy or mistreated or in a bad position. So for me, that was part of the undergirding piece of it. So why Louisville, what made me decide to go there was really rooted in a couple of things. My life circumstances at the time. I was working at the University of Louisville, very happy there what I was doing, had opportunities for growth and advancement, and the PhD was going to be paid for. That was a huge factor. And I knew if I didn't start it then, I would probably never start it. I get really loyal to jobs and to work I'm doing in companies and organizations. So I didn't want to linger too long. And so despite some advice I was getting that, oh, you need to wait, and people will tell you everything. We're going to tell you a lot of things today, but it's going to boil down to a lot of factors that have to do with how you, if you are ready and how you're ready to get into that work. So I jumped in because of that. I did do my PhD part-time because I was working full-time, which I wanted to do as an administrator, and knew I wanted to kind of go through the ranks eventually and climb the ranks of higher education. So I knew I needed a degree. The timing was right. I was thoughtful and prayerful about it, and that's when I decided to go into it. And we'll get into some more details about
that. And thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all about my professional path to the EDD. My name is Lisa Jackson, and I am currently at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, where I serve in the capacity of the Associate Director of New Student Programs. So I have a little bit of a non-traditional path in earning my doctorate, or even coming, into student affairs. Initially, I started in corporate America, and I never had the desire or the interest to earn a PhD. I had a high influential person who remains part of my life now, who was one of my undergraduate professors. Her name is Dr. Cassandra Vini. And one thing she always instilled in me was to seek all you can, while you can, and when you can. So when I started my career in student affairs in 2003, I started in housing and residential life. So I was going back and forth with, do I want to get a PhD or do I want to get an EDD? So at that time, I started to research the differences. Later on, I had moved on to my next position in Maryland. And I said, well, I think I want to get the EDD. As being a housing professional at this time, that is, I see myself more of a practitioner rather than a researcher, which a lot of times a PhD is typically research-based and heavy research. Not that I was afraid of research or doing the research or able to do the research, but it's just that my professional interest kind of guided me more to the role of being a practitioner. So keeping in mind that interest of doing an EDD, and at that time in my career, being a housing professional, I completed my doctorate in higher educational leadership with a focus on educational leadership through a non-traditional program at Argosy University, which is one of the many online institutions. And at that time, it was a lot more controversial than what it is now. But as I said, being a housing professional and knowing that I had to juggle being on call and doing all of those different things, as well as continuing to grow as a professional, attending Argosy was the best decision for me. So looking at that is what really shaped the type of institution that I chose to do my degree at, in addition to why I chose to earn the EDD.
Awesome. And my name is Jaymee Lewis-Flenaugh, and I'm actually a first-year PhD student at Miami University in the Student Affairs and Higher Education program, gender pronouns, she, her, hers. And it was something where I found myself writing and wanting to write more and wanting to learn more of the skill behind doing research. And I think that really guided my final decision to apply. Our program accepts on a 2-year basis, cohort model. And when I was thinking about my why, I always knew that I wanted to pursue a PhD, to be able to write. I had an English major in undergrad, and then my master's was very focused on student development, learning partnerships model, and so I was able to mirror that here at Miami, and really focused on the social justice work that was reflected in my presentations and writing before. But I knew that there were certain skills that I was missing, and I was fortunate enough to have people around me to fill those gaps, things that you learn in PhD programs. But I am blessed to have been able to be invested in this experience to learn a lot more of that for myself. Of course, there's the career advancement piece. I would be lying if I said that wasn't a part of, my identity as a Black Belizean American woman, that wasn't thinking about what it means to have credibility in certain spaces. I think that's very real for some people. And so my journey has been a good one so far, 3rd semester in, and doing great and really loving the experience and the opportunities that I get to just learn a lot more in different ways. I am a part-time student, full-time employee, and so it allows me to switch my mind. Later today, I'll be in a quantitative research class, and I just get to switch the way I think from day to day, and it's been nice and refreshing to do that. So.
Thank you so much for introducing yourselves and telling us a quick snippet about your journeys. I think one of the questions that people have is, when should I do this? When is the right time? Should I go to school full-time? Should I work full-time, get part-time? If I don't go now, will I ever do it? Do I actually need a PhD? So with those questions in mind, I'm sure you mulled over some of them during your process and your professional development. When did you feel it was an appropriate time to move forward? What made you go ahead and say, all right, it's time to do this and I'm going to get it done?
I can go ahead and start answering that question, Janelle. I think for me, it was when I reached a point in my career professionally where I had the conception of thinking that a PhD or an EDD would be the way that I achieve some of my professional goals. So knowing that I have the goal in mind of being a vice president of student affairs, I've worked under the premise that in order for you to be able to elevate yourself to that level of a position, you need to have the education to back up that you're capable of being at that level of the position. Now, I kind of have a little bit of a different thought and mindset about that now that I have continued to grow as a professional. So I don't always think that you need, I don't think at all that you need to have a terminal degree to elevate yourself to a position. What I have began to learn as a professional is that your skill set more or less determines how you elevate yourself to a position. I'm not saying that there are some institutions where you may not need to have the terminal degree, but I think the skill set coupled along with the institutional size and their makeup is kind of what makes the package complete. So if you're looking at being at a large institution and want to be a vice president or a president of an institution, then you might want to give that a little bit of more thought if you're toggling back and forth to if you get a terminal degree or if you don't get a terminal degree. The other piece that I would also add is take a break. One thing that I encourage students that I really frown upon is going through school continuously. You can have 5,000 degrees but lack experience. The experience is what is going to get you a position coupled by your education. The education alone is not going to get you in the door. If you don't have the experience to support the research and the theory that you know behind the degrees, then what point are the degrees serving you? So that's one thing that I would, consider and suggest everybody to think about.
Oh gosh, so much to say, right? I see Jaymee nodding, amen. And I'm gonna jump in there real quick, and then I see my colleague over there want to jump in. So, I think Lisa nailed a lot of that. So I want to caution folks. It's like, I think it's any big goal, right? So I think about somebody. I'm not a mountain climber, clearly, but I think about somebody who wants to climb Mount Everest, right? Or run a marathon, right? Those are big deals, and I think you don't just do it because it's like, well, why not? Why not go climb Mount Everest? It's got to be anchored to something, right? So for you, I think you have to. It's going to be it's a very personal decision. There is no right answer to it. You have to think about, yes, what are your ultimate goals? I agree with Lisa that you don't have to have certain things, but I want to go back to my point earlier, and I won't even say but. And I want to go back to my point earlier. That I never wanted to get to a job that was the perfect job, right? In the perfect place, right where I wanted to be. And all of a sudden it's these letters that are stopping me despite all my experience from even getting in the pool, right? And as I sit on presidential searches now and do other searches for senior level positions, if that terminal degree is required, then the system sometimes won't even let you in. It asks, do you have a terminal degree? No, boom, to the drop box. You go to the other side. You don't even get into the pool to be looked at because you don't meet the minimum quals. So I never wanted that to happen. If you are okay with that and know that, well, I'm never going to be in a job where I need to be in that job that bad, and I'm gonna pick wherever I want to go after that. I'm flexible. It's not that serious. My career goals likely won't put me in that position. Then the terminal degree may just be extra, which is fine too if you want just the kind of educational experience. But I think the terminal degree is about educational experience and intent to use it, right? So I think there's a lot of ways to develop yourself without going to get a terminal degree, which is costly. It costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of time. Even when it's free, right? Somebody's paying for that, right? So it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of sweat and tears, as Jaymee will tell you. And so it's daunting to go through it. It's totally doable. I mean, our people have been through much more to get a degree, but it takes time. And so I think you need to be thoughtful about it before you get into it. But once you're sure, get into it, right? I don't know what you're waiting for. If the timing is right and the circumstances are right, I don't know what the value of saying, oh, but I want to wait another 2 years when there's no real strategic value in doing so.
You just made me want to like give 15 snaps to so many things. I think it's such an individualized process. It really is. And I know Michael said that, but it depends on what you're aiming for. So in my mind, if you go in the faculty route, if you want to teach in higher education, student affairs programs, college personnel programs, sometimes it might be beneficial to just dive right in, go all in, and become a full-time student, because that research part, you're investing your mind in a very different way. And so that can be beneficial. A lot of people choose to go full-time practitioner and then part-time student because there's a gap in your education. But there are still folks who decide to take that time, 3-year, 4-year programs, and say, I'm going to take a break from working like traditional work environment to really invest in my doctoral degree. And I think that it's just important to think about what your life setup is. In terms of the timeliness, I always like to represent for young Black women and saying that timing is totally individualized. One thing that really motivated me was knowing that I could do it and talking to so many people who did do it. And so that timing is almost never really right. Like for some people it's right in the way that it's right for them, but there are so many times when it could feel like it's wrong. And yet it's based on your situation. I remember I submitted my application for the doctoral program. My son came a month early, and I submitted my application when he was a week old. And so, and I said, I'm going to do this, we're going to do it. And so our family is doing it. And so it just depends. I could say, well, now is not the right time, but when is, right? So some people make a decision to do it before they have children, perfectly fine. Some people say, I'm going to dive in and we're going to make this work. And the whole family is getting a Ph.D. or an Ed.D. It's just depending on the individual. But for those who are going the faculty route, I definitely say consider what it might look like for your lifestyle, financially, socially, structurally, to do it full time.
And I would like to add a little bit onto the timeliness part, and also my status when I went through my EDD program. I was working full time, and I also did an accelerated program full time. So it was quite challenging. Being a woman with no children, I clap my hands and give kudos to those who do have family members that they have to care for at the time, because knowing what I went through as a single individual during my program was daunting. When you're thinking about the program that you're going through, and if the timing is right, you have to, at least for me, some things that I thought about was, would I be okay with putting some things that could happen in my life on hold? Would I put my education on hold, or would I put Lisa's personal life on hold while I continued the program? Because as Michael said, once I got into the program, I was full steam ahead. I was going to continue to live life. Balancing everything was definitely not easy. As I mentioned, I was in an on-call position. So I had to make sure that I had good, solid relationships with my team members, because being in a blended program, sometimes I had to travel, and that travel would be me going to class for a weekend. So that would mean Lisa was missing 4 days where she could possibly be on call, where anything could happen on campus, and I'm not able there to assist. So not only did I have to have the support from my supervisor, I also had the support from my colleagues, because if you're in a housing position, or if you've ever been in a position where you're in an on-call capacity, you know that things can happen, at all times of the day and night, and you really have no control over that. So I really want to have a clear conscience that if something happened on campus in my absence, that I wasn't going to feel guilty by not being able to be there to play my part. So those are some things that I really had to process and think about. even now, when I step back and think about it, where I am in my life personally, I wonder, okay, you know, if you did this, what would have happened? You know, wishing that I might have given it a little bit more thought, but I still don't change the process that I went through, because it was right for me and I did it at the right time for me. So ultimately, I'm happy. The things that didn't happen in my life personally can still happen now. So I was okay and continue to be okay with the decision that I made. So if you do have, you know, family members, let them know it's a journey for us. While I'm the one going through the journey personally and physically all the time, I need you all to be on board with me. I may not be available every time that you all want to do something or when we may want to do something. But with saying that, I also say time management is important. I still have my social life. I still took my vacations. My girlfriends still say to me right now sometimes, you really brought homework with you on our vacation. Yeah, I really did bring homework with me. I was focused. I was on a goal. I was on a mission. I didn't do homework the entire time, but I did dedicate and devote some time every day to completing assignments and making sure that I was keeping Lisa's mission in focus.
Can I add, Janelle? I want to just add a few things. I want to tie into what's been said and what's kind of coming up in that conversation. I hit a lot of points. So people are talking about personal supports in the process too. So I think there's an opportunity to use those to our advantage as well. So, and let me expand our language. I know we have Ph.D. and EDD, and talking to a colleague here in Minnesota, up in the Twin Cities area, the JD, right? So the Juris Doctorate may be an option for some people. And there are presidents and senior vice presidents and vice presidents and deans and everything in between that hold JDs as well. So I think the terminal degree is one that opens doors in certain ways, but which one and the timing of it is this what this conversation is about, right? And so I think I want to clarify too, before I think about talk about this personal anchor. We're talking about research. People who complete EDDs also complete dissertations and they do research, right? See a thumbs up there? So I think that's there. I want to be very careful about people. I think the difference is trivial, and I think it's one that just doesn't serve any purpose in our work. And so the EDD, there's research to the EDD. I don't want you to go in there and say, I don't have to do a dissertation now. Yes, you do. You do have to do research. The difference is that I think if you look at a class list of what Jaymee's taking and maybe what Lisa took or how Jaymee and mine look the same, you might see a different a volume, a quantity of research courses and types of research courses. So I took 21 different hours of statistics courses at the graduate level, some very advanced, and that led to some different kind of work experiences, different kind of experiences in the program. But it doesn't mean that EDDs aren't doing it. Now, JDs are not doing a dissertation. So that if you want to talk about a difference in really the outcomes, then maybe talk about that. But it doesn't mean that they're also not prepared either. So let me just want to put that out there. So what I use, if you've all seen the movie Inception, it's bizarre. Come on, Lisa. You know what I'm saying? So come on now. It's a really good movie. But you probably want to have a drink or two before you watch it, or don't, one or two. I don't know. Depends on how well you do. So it's really dense, and it has this. You get trapped in this dream world. Okay, just imagine that. And so in this dream world, they would take something with them called the totem. They called it a totem. I don't know, TOTEM, maybe. I don't know how to spell it. But they took this thing in the dream world to remind them that they're in a dream and that there's a real world outside of that. So I think when I talk to doctoral students, I ask them to think about sometimes that little baby that just came by is your anchor to the real world. Because you can get lost in that doctoral program and be doing it for 10 years. I mean, trust me, I got folks in my circles who are just, I don't know what's happening, but they're not finishing. And so you don't want to get stuck in that space. And so I used my baby girl when she was being born almost 9 years ago, when she was being born to anchor me to say, I want to get done because I want to make sure I'm spending time with her and taking care of her. So she was born a year before I finished. She was born in 2009. I finished in 2010. And so I knew by the time she was getting active, where she wasn't just sitting there sleeping and eating, I wanted to be really there for her and not bothered by school. And so yeah, that serves to do that. So when you're getting your supports together for it, don't think that necessarily things happening in your life are necessarily distractions. They can be very strong reminders and anchors that this is why you're doing this work. So yeah, that's important to remember.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your life experiences. I know sometimes people want to know those personal questions. They want to know, how did you do this with a kid? When did you bring in a family? Were you doing this alone? I want to kind of go back and ask a specific question for Lisa. So with an online program, and knowing that there's so much, I wouldn't say confusion, but people don't always respect an online degree. And so what has been your experience with justifying, because I feel like you probably have had to justify that, nope, I know what I'm doing. I did the same amount of work. I took the same amount of time, did the same research, those types of things. How have you had to justify your experience and your degree?
You know, Janelle, I have been very fortunate and very blessed where the institutions I have worked at have not questioned or challenged where I earned the degree. And I think part of that comes from when they're interacting with me. I understand, you know, many things. I can explain and support things. And I guess that might just be the simple part of it, you know, and it gives me something to think about because I have not been in that position. If someone were to challenge me, knowing me and how sarcastic and challenging I can be, I would probably challenge them back. I'm not saying that would be the best thing to do or the wisest thing to do. But I would really want to know and have a clear understanding as to why do you feel you can challenge me and where I obtained my education and the type of institution that I chose to earn that degree from. I know that we have different tiers of institutions, and institutions have different perceptions as to what they are. You know, they created their character, so to speak. So the program that I completed has not been one of the institutions that have been controversial. They have not been one of the institutions that have had any of their accreditations challenged. So I would really want to engage in a conversation with them a little bit more about why, you know, why do you feel that my degree is less than that of if I went to an Ivy League institution or if I went to a Research One institution and earned that degree? The institution name does not equate to my level of education. My experience, the knowledge that I gained from the program, and how I can display my knowledge and the understanding of certain content is what speaks to Lisa's education. So yeah, I might have the name of Argosy University written on a piece of paper, but don't let that fool you. Don't let the type of institution that I chose to attend that was best for me give you a thought before you interact with me. Talk with me a little bit more and see who Lisa is and what Lisa is about before you try to make any type of decision or get an idea of who I am.
Thank you.
I'm just not passionate about that. I'm sorry.
well, I think about all the terrible people who've gone to these great schools. Like I see all these, I mean, you get these people who went to traditional schools and like it's a false equivalency, right? We're equating like the school you went to with your work. And Lisa started off earlier talking about your work. People have got to do good work. It's too much of this running around here doing I'm just banking on the degree or banking on the school you went to. And trust me, being in a community college setting, this is conversations we have, right, about people going to school. I know I was so critical of community colleges coming out of high school. And this is coming from an 18-year-old who didn't know nothing about nothing, but had plenty of opinions about higher education, but was a first-generation college student who about failed out in his sophomore year, thinking he was doing this the right. So I think we have to be really, there's perception and there's reality. There's good work and there's bad work. And so I think in our spaces, we have to be supportive of each other and trying to do what's best for us, and still doing good work. Now, if you come out with a great degree from whatever school you come from and do bad work, that's not going to get you anywhere, period.
So thinking about the different factors that you all considered in making your final decision on where to go, which degree program to pick, what things did you have to think about when you think about financing your education? Did you consider cohort models? Were you more concerned with if it was research heavy or practicum heavy? What factors did you really have to consider in making that final decision?
I think I really thought about, one, financing it. Just to be honest, like, we have to make sure that at the end of the day, we're eating. And so that was very important. But in terms of making this decision, I already worked at this institution. And so as I was thinking about it, I was learning more about it. I shadowed a class. So if programs offer that, definitely do it. I got syllabi beforehand just to say, like, okay, what are you looking at? What are you reading? And then learned a lot more about the department as a whole. So not just the specific program, but ours is under educational leadership. And so I took an opportunity to learn a lot more about that. I think that, for me, it was a blessing to work at the school that I was already at, or that I was pursuing a degree at. But in terms of what really sold this particular program for me, because there are others, was the smaller cohort model, was the focus on people looking at student affairs and higher education from a social justice perspective. That was very important to me, to make sure that people were getting having their voices heard in that space. And it has not proven to be wrong, which has been wonderful. The focus on you being able to also add in a concentration if you would like. So for me, organizational leadership is my thing. And I'm thinking about how do I merge the two? I finally settled on a dissertation topic, so I'm very excited about that. But they're very supportive. And then thinking about how they support you through the dissertation process, because every single school is different, and how they guide you through that process and what the buildup looks like or doesn't look like to get through. So those considerations were very important. So I think it was just all around a good decision, but really thinking about how your life is set up with that program. Do they have people that might look like you, if that's important for you? Do they have people who have some similar kind of life setups that you can talk to and see if they really support sometimes we say that we support something, but for people to really see that they support it and there's a student going through it who supports it, whatever that it is, I think that's very important. So those are the major things: the social justice focus, of course, considering the finances, and the support through dissertation.
Let's see. So I was oh gosh, those are some really good reasons. For me, it was more about it was time and place. So when I finished my master's, I knew I felt so good to be done with school finally, right? For so long. I knew I wanted to get into the doctorate program because I was getting very comfortable. So I got out, and I was out for about a year or so, and I was getting really comfortable being out of school and working and making a little bit of money working full time. So I got back in because I knew, it was a gut feeling kind of thing. So I knew I needed to get back in. I knew I had access to a program. I knew most of my credits were going to transfer in. I wish it was a cohort-based model. They've done better about it at university now, but I wish it was more cohorted, and I wish it had a little bit more, much like Miami and some of the other what they call CHI or HESA programs, right? Higher Ed and Student Affairs. I wish I had a little bit more of that emphasis. I built mine around some more. We had college student personnel and higher ed, and so what I did was kind of made sure my electives were in that student personnel area. But the bulk of my coursework was in ed leadership, higher ed administration. So so I wish I had a little bit more of that. But at the end of the day, I did what was best financially, timing wise. It was an opportunity that was presenting itself to me. And as an example of the kind of different routes, myself and Dr. Fashad Crawford, who now works down at NC State University. He was at Kent State for some time. And he went the faculty route and I went the administrator route. So he went full time. It's just perfect case study. He went full time, all in, doing teaching assistantships within the department, started some research early, really got in there. I was doing part-time. So he got done faster. He got done probably about a year and a half, maybe a little bit more before I did, and then went straight into teaching in the classroom. While at that time, I was still moving up the ladder administratively. So by the time I had finished my doctorate, I had at that point, I guess 6 to 7 years of full-time, 5 to 6 years of full-time experience, terminal degree, and at that time I was sitting as a director of a department. So yeah, it was different paths. Now he's back in funny enough, he's back in administration now. But he did, it was a good example of how the paths diverge, and we both went in as because it was a good opportunity for us at the time. So yeah.
I would say for me, I wish, in hindsight, that I would have picked a program that funded me to earn my doctorate. I worked from a premise ever since I was an undergrad, was that one thing no one can ever take away from me is my education. So whatever cost were associated with me gaining one, I was okay with gaining that. Now that I'm a little bit wiser and debt is real, sometimes when I look at that monthly student loan payment, or I look at the balance of my student loans, I'm like, man, but I keep in mind what I told myself when I was a freshman, sophomore in college, that regardless of how I have to obtain my education, I am going to obtain it, and no one can ever take it away from me. So funding for me, as I said, was not at the top of my list of things that I was thinking about during the process. As I shared when I introduced myself, I was more or less focused on what type of program is going to be best for my life right now in the type of professional environment that I'm in. So that is what really drove the type of institution that I chose. I did choose the online institution for convenience. And I have no problem saying that I chose it for convenience, because that's real. So it was what it was, and it is what it is. I learned an immense amount. Jaymee mentioned earlier that later this afternoon, she's shifting her brain to a quantitative course. Quantitative statistics scared the bejesus out of me, because I am not a numbers driven person. I am not a math person. If you catch me on a bad day, I may not be able to tell you what 2 + 2 is. So when I started my quantitative courses, the teacher asked, what was your biggest fear? And I told her, my biggest fear is failure of this course. I'm nearing the end of my program, and I'm really afraid that I'm not going to know the Sam Dickens of what you're talking about. And I said, I need you to be ready. I know that this is an online course. At that time, I was in the Dallas area. She was in DC. So I'm like, you got virtual office hours? Baby, let me let you know. Lisa's going to be in your virtual office hours every week. And yes, Lisa was trying to figure out P scores, F this, and, Z that, because I had no idea what I was doing. So that program, I really didn't know at the time that I started it, was really good for me. I don't know if I would have gotten that same type of response from a traditional program. Not saying that I might not have I may not have gotten a response from a different type of online institutional program either. I think coupled with me being honest with her on day one that, 2 + 2 may not equal 4 for me all the time, and letting her know, yeah, baby girl, I'm gonna be in your office hours, and actually sticking to this, to that is what set me up for success. So there wasn't one thing over the other that attracted me to the program, other than the fact that it was what was able to fit into Lisa's life at that particular point. And as a side note, I end up getting an A in that quantitative course. I end up driving extra credit for the final. I took the course in the fall term, so the teacher was trying to get grades done before she left for winter break to take her family to Disney. So she bounced questions off of me. She's like, would you like extra credit as a course, as a class? I'm going to offer this to you all. If I said, have your exam into me by this time, how would you feel about extra credit? I'm like, you know what? I like you because I can make this happen. I made it happen. I got the A. And then I went on to take an additional 3 other quantitative courses. So the doubt that I had in myself about being successful in quantitative statistics totally, was washed away. Now, if you ask me to do quantitative stuff now, I'm going to frown upon it, but I can make it happen. I might have some sleepless nights because I was known in my program, if I couldn't figure something out and I got stuck, I would go to bed. Sometimes, my laptop stayed on the side of the bed with me. That was my buddy. So if I would be asleep, it would not be unusual for me to wake up in the middle of the night and I figured something out in my head during my sleep, and I would roll over to the laptop and I would put in the answer and then roll back over and go back to bed. So I cannot say that there was one thing over the other that drove me to the program except for fit. That fit is really important. So I know I got a little sidetracked, but that kind of all just gave me a little bit of life when I was talking about the type of program that I chose to pursue.
Awesome, thank you. I kind of want to switch gears, but before I do, if you're watching, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type those in the chat box. We will throw them in. We've got about 15 more minutes left in our broadcast, so we want to make sure that we're hearing from you and you have all your questions answered. So as we move forward, I want to talk about imposter syndrome. What hindered you? What did you feel where did you feel your doubt was coming from? Where did you feel that sense of, I cannot do this, or I might not be able to finish this because of X, Y, and Z identity, whether it's first generation, whether it's gender identity, whether it's race? What were those things that made you feel like you did not fit in your program, or that you were not fit to complete your degree or pursue one?
I can go ahead and start answering that one. I was a first generation college student. And, as I mentioned with no shame, math does not come easy to me. So I was really afraid of starting something and not being able to finish it. So knowing that I was first generation and that my family was really looking, they have always been very supportive of all of my goals. I did not want to disappoint them. Knowing that sometimes, that while they may not have attended college or did not complete college in the traditional path, I wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to complete that. Also knowing that there is research that supports students who grow up in an urban area, primarily part of a public school system that has not necessarily public school system. So let me clarify that part, but standardized testing is the point that I'm getting at, that students of color are typically not successful and don't have strong suits in certain areas because of the type of education they received could be challenging for them. I am a product of the Chicago public school system. So knowing that and knowing that the odds were against me kind of scared me. Knowing that I might have to put a little bit more effort in it than what my counterpart did kind of scared me. I remember like this morning when I presented my my proposed dissertation topic to an instructor at a class. She was a white female, and she completely told me that I had no idea what I was talking about. That point right there almost broke me. And I wrote a message on my Facebook wall saying in so many words that I was about to give up. And as I mentioned earlier, I had an undergraduate professor that has been very influential in my life, Dr. Vini. She responded to me, and she even gave me a phone call, and she was like, no. So she gave me a little bit of a lecture. My brother also responded to the post saying, no, you can't be defeated. So when I think about all of those things, that's what moved me forward. I was just at a point where, like, you know what? I think what she did when she told me that my topic was trash and in other terms, and in her terms, not viable, I think that kind of fueled me. It kind of was like, you know what? And I wish I could find her now, because I let her know, hey, that same topic that I told you in class, look at here, baby, it's bounded. So I wish I could find her now and let her know, just because you thought it wasn't viable doesn't mean that it was viable. And I found someone to support me and to push me through.
I think imposter syndrome is interesting. I'm very familiar with it in the sense of other people's experiences, but it's a challenge because as I was in my first full semester with our cohort, going through the experience and listening to other people talk about that experience, it was not something that I connected with. And I talked to a faculty member about it. And for me, as I said at the beginning, I think that being Belizean American, Black, identified, it makes a difference because sometimes those narratives that are very focused in the African American experience, I don't always connect with in terms of the narratives that I was raised with. So thinking about, you might not be good enough, or you don't have a certain ability to do something. Those weren't things that I readily grew up with in my household, in my direct family group, things like that. It was, I have an immigrant mother. And so it was very much so education was at the forefront. You brought home a B, why didn't you get an A? And not in a way that was suffocating, right? So like Lisa said, math was not my strong suit either. So at a certain point, we came to terms with, I worked really hard for that C that one time. But, so that's life. But I think it's very interesting, and it goes back to having to hear people's stories and understand that it's a very individualized process. Because for me, I don't necessarily feel as impacted by imposter syndrome. There are times when it gets very hard, yes, but that feeling as if it is, I'm not fit to be here, I don't have that. And I think it's a blessing. And so for me, I just want to support folks and tell them that, like Michael said at the beginning, our people have been through far worse. And so we can get through this. It means finding a certain space, a certain time, a certain manner that's appropriate for what you need, and really seeking out that support, but we can get through it. And so whether it's the passion, the dedication, the resilience, the grit, the determination, whatever that looks like for you, and that foundation of why that's there for you, definitely consider that, think through it, but know that this is something that you can do because so many before us have.
So I had a lot of support from those around me. So going through the program, I'm hard pressed to find times where I felt kind of the imposter syndrome hit. I know it happened, but they were not salient enough for me to remember as I think through it. But but there are a lot of factors surrounding that, so I don't want to go to too much detail. There's a lot of factors surrounding why I was buffered in different ways. But I have felt it a great deal in my career, right? The younger black male. I think I'm still young sometimes. Younger black male going through the ranks that I'm in now, definitely get the imposter syndrome. And I got my own demons through that process, but that's a different webinar. So we'll save it for next time. There's a question that I want to address from the group, from the audience, and I'm not much help in this regard. I don't the funding piece, and like, are there scholarships outside of the institution that are available? I don't know. Maybe my colleagues have more answers to that. I'm thinking if you're in a traditional kind of institution, though, so if you're not doing loans and such, which I did some of that as well through my graduate years, if you're working with they should be helping you with that at the college, right? So if you're at a university, traditional or non, I'm thinking they should be able to tell you, here are some things either locally or regionally or nationally that can help you with this. Or they should be finding funding for you. If you're full-time, you certainly shouldn't be. You should be funded through assistantship, teaching, research, or something if you're going full-time. So for the part-time students, I think there's some other options that are out there. I'm not very versed on them.
I would say same, and this isn't to cover the entire amount, but if your school offers professional development funds, whether through your job, so if you're part-time, full-time, through your job and then through your program, they may have sources of funding there. And so definitely start there, definitely ask those questions. For your job, can you apply your professional development funds to your classes? So it might not be where some spaces might not allow you to do that, but this is professional development. And so conferences, webinars, things like that that cost money, you might sacrifice those things. So I won't be at NASPA, but it's those sacrifices that you make in the short term. And so if they allow you to put professional development monies towards that, definitely do it. And the same conversation that we have about negotiating salaries, especially as Black people, making sure that we're negotiating funds for our professional development, because if we get a degree in a certain space, we're adding to the value of our department, of our institution. And so for you to be able to advocate for yourself is very, very important. And crowdsource, see what funding is out there. Oh, I'm doing research in this area of, orientation. Is there anything there? And it might be, it might not be, but you never want to say you didn't try. And then your academic department may also have some sources of funding. So of course, it won't cover the full amount of tuition that we know is growing and growing and growing, but it's something that might help to, alleviate some of the financial burden. But, for as many people who don't pay for their degrees, there are a significant number of people who do pay for their degrees. So whatever decision that you make for yourself, again, it's your decision. And, at the end of the day, your education will carry you through, and you can never lose that.
Awesome. Thank you. So we've come to the time where we got to wrap up our conversation. So I'm going to ask you one more. When you think about your support systems and what helped you get through the days when you didn't think you could do it anymore, or I know, Jaymee, you still have a long way to go. What is helping you? What's holding you? What's pushing you? How are you able to persist to degree completion? And Jaymee, for you specifically, what keeps you going and what keeps you motivated? A little kickstart.
Whew, okay. I had to think about that. I think that there are a lot of different pieces. I'm going to wrap it up really fast. There are a lot of pieces that are keeping me going. It's almost going to sound like an awards ceremony where you just thank everybody. But thank you, to my husband. He's amazing. He's an amazing partner. And so when I'm in class, I'm in class until 7:30 tonight, and then I'm working on something right after for a student organization that invited me in, and he's with my son. So our son. So it's a team effort. My supervisor has also gone through through the program. And so in our one-on-ones, I'm like bringing homework, like, oh, I know you want to talk about work, but I have some other things that we can talk about. So, so let's talk about this homework. So that is a team effort there. For other people, we have networks on campus. So someone just started our doctoral sisters group, and we have lunch and we just talk about what it means to be Black women in doctoral programs across the range of the university, which is really nice. Support, it comes in also being able to advocate for myself, and I had to change some things and really be strict about my time, especially with my staff that I would supervise. So I think it's really important to consider the support and know that it's going to shift. I think that the support that's coming from my family is growing and changing, but it comes along with that process of people understanding what this lifestyle looks like. And so that's been a challenge in itself, to make sure that people understand that I can't make this, or I can't always call, or I can't always text. And sometimes you just don't want to because you're tired. So for me, it's been advocating for myself. That's been another bridge of the support. There's the external support from so many people who are helping me through. My faculty are amazing, familiar relationships. We can go over the house for dinner, whatever that looks like, but also me advocating, saying like, this is what I need, and finding my voice in spaces to do that.
I'll close by saying the same thing that got you through life up till now, people, strong people in your circles. I think about Dr. Fashad Crawford, I mentioned earlier, and Dr. Michael Suje, who's just kind of legendary in our field, in Black male education particularly, but Dr. Dwayne Compton and Dr. Jonathan Johnson, these are brothers who I'll get to see this weekend. Same people who we're all going through this journey together, and finished at different times, but we finished. So I think the idea is you grab the people that same people you will help to get you through an illness, right? A major illness. Some of you are cancer survivors and survivors of domestic abuse and other kind of horrific things. And you lean on people around you, right? And that's the same exact thing that got me through the program. My ex-wife at the time and my family at the time, all supportive and supported me through that process. And you want to work with those folks, right? And they will help get you through.
And I would say for me, to echo what Jaymee and Michael have said, is making sure that I had the right people in my circle. That was really important. Making sure that if I wasn't holding myself accountable, that I had someone in my life that was comfortable enough to hold me accountable and to call me out. If I was out kicking it at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, way too many days during the week, then they would be okay pulling me up and saying, Lisa, did you get some homework done today? Did you do some reading? How is quantitative statistics really treating you right now? So I was okay with that. So that circle of influence is important. So making sure that support system you have is there with you, from rain or shine, and, all around you and coming from you different angles. And also making sure too that you're doing self-care. I jokingly say, I was out to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. That did happen, but not too many days. But it was more or less a time for me to, maybe step away and to rejuvenate and refresh myself. And to know that with all of the rigor that I'm putting myself through and that I'm facing in this program, that it's okay to have a little bit of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of your expertise, your conversations, your jokes, your laughter. It's been a great morning speaking with you and learning about your journeys and your current journey to your degree. So I want to provide a huge round of applause to our 3 panelists today. Thank you for joining me this morning, and thank you for our viewers who tuned in for Black Educated and Terminally Bound, presented by the AAKC in the 4 East region. I want to give a shameless plug for anyone who's attending NASPA at our national conference this upcoming week in Philadelphia. We do have an AAKC business meeting that will be happening on Monday at 2 p.m. So if you are interested in getting involved within your region or nationally with the AAKC board, please stop by this. This is an open business meeting where we can talk to you about what's going on within our community. We're going to celebrate some amazing graduate students, new professionals, mid-level professionals, and the accomplishments that they have achieved this school year, this academic year, and really have a time to be in community. We have so many spaces where in the Midwest, especially where we're at predominantly white institutions, and this allows us to come together as a collective and just kind of grow and be together, which is a really great experience to have, especially if it's only coming around once a year. So please stay tuned for more webinar opportunities from the AAKC, and we'll see you in Philadelphia. Have a great day.